Today, we are exposing a terrifying 40-year-old Australian law that most people do not even know exists. It is called the Liquid Fuel Emergency Act, 1984. Right now, as the 2026 fuel crisis cripples our supply chains and empties supermarket shelves, the government is wargaming how to use this exact law to take control of the pumps, ration your petrol, and decide who gets to eat. Stay with me to the end, because I'm going to break down exactly how this law works, what it means for your family's food supply, and the 5 specific things you must do right now before the panic buying locks you out completely. Australians have been living in a dream world when it comes to fuel and food. We assume that because we are a massive, wealthy country, we control our own destiny. But here is the chilling reality. Australia imports almost 90% of its refined liquid fuel, particularly diesel. Our entire just-in-time supermarket system, the tractors on the farm, the refrigerated trucks on the highway, and the backup generators keeping the meat cool, is entirely dependent on that imported diesel. With the current war in the Middle East blockading the Strait of Hormuz, global oil supply has choked. Australia only has around 34 days of onshore diesel storage. Fuel prices are exploding, regional farmers are being cut off from bulk deliveries, and farming groups are explicitly warning that the lack of diesel is stopping food from moving from paddocks to plates. So what happens when the fuel actually runs out? That is when the government triggers the Liquid Fuel Emergency Act. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is current Australian legislation. The Act gives the Commonwealth sweeping COVID-style emergency powers. They can command refineries, redirect bulk supply, and most importantly, implement mandatory retail fuel rationing. If triggered, everyday Australians will likely face strict daily dollar value or litre limits at the bowser. But more importantly, the law divides society into 2 groups: everyday citizens and essential users. Police, ambulances, and military get fuel first. Then comes food production and transport. You, the average motorist, are at the very bottom of the list. If there is not enough diesel to run the milk tankers and your family SUV, you will be cut off so the supermarket trucks can keep moving. The government insists rationing is not a conversation we need to have at this point, even as they release millions of litres from our emergency domestic reserves just to keep the regions running. But when you understand how fragile the system is, waiting for the government to save you is not a strategy. Here are the 5 things you must do right now to protect your family before this law is triggered. Number 1. Build a 30-day no-cook pantry buffer. When fuel rationing hits, the first casualty is the supermarket cold chain. Refrigerated trucks burn massive amounts of diesel to keep the trailers cold. If they are restricted, fresh meat, dairy, and highly perishable vegetables simply will not be transported. You need a 30-day supply of food that requires 0 refrigeration and 0 cooking. If the power grid fails because the diesel backup generators run dry, you cannot rely on frozen food. What to do? Stock up on high-quality, Australian-made canned goods. Focus on canned lentils, chickpeas, and black beans for protein. Buy canned Australian salmon or sardines in olive oil or spring water. Avoid the cheap imported tuna swimming in inflammatory soybean oil. Load up on bulk rolled oats, raw Australian honey, and large tins of extra virgin olive oil. These are calorically dense, nutrient-rich foods that will keep your family fed even if the fridge is warm and the stove is off. On the surface, the government says we are securing supply chains. But underneath, the reality is, if the trucks stop, the supermarket shelves empty in 72 hours, you must be your own supply chain. Number 2. Secure your essential medications. Immediately. This is the blind spot almost everyone misses. During the Senate inquiries into Australia's transport energy resilience, experts explicitly warned that retail pharmacy supplies are highly vulnerable to a national fuel shortage. Australia imports the vast majority of its pharmaceuticals. When global shipping is disrupted and domestic transport is rationed, the flow of daily medications slows to a crawl. Pharmacies operate on the exact same just-in-time delivery model as supermarkets. What to do? Do not wait until you have 3 days of medication left. Go to your doctor now. Explain that you want to build a buffer due to the current supply chain disruptions. Get your scripts filled for at least an extra month in advance. This applies to asthma inhalers, blood pressure medication, insulin, and basic first aid supplies like painkillers and antibiotics. When the Liquid Fuel Emergency Act kicks in, ambulances will get fuel, but the delivery truck carrying your family's medication might be delayed by weeks. Number 3, top up and maintain your vehicles. Daily. When panic buying starts, the servo is the most dangerous place to be. We have already seen reports of massive queues, fuel stations running dry, and tempers flaring at the pumps. Under the retail rationing framework of the LFEA, you could be legally restricted to buying perhaps $50 of fuel per day or a strict litre limit. And if a service station breaks that rule, they face massive government penalties. What to do? Change your mindset from "I will fill up when the light comes on" to "I will never let my tank drop below half." Treat the top half of your fuel tank as your daily driving allowance and the bottom half as your untouchable emergency reserve. If the government suddenly announces rationing on a Tuesday night, you do not want to be the person sitting in a 2-kilometer queue on an empty tank. If you have a half-full tank, you can comfortably bypass the chaos and get your family to safety or work. The messaging says, "Do not panic buy. There is enough fuel." The logical response is top up quietly and consistently so you are never caught in the panic. Number 4. Prepare for extreme transport price hikes. Even if we avoid full-blown mandatory rationing, the economic damage of the fuel crisis is already locked in. Trucking companies run on incredibly tight margins. When diesel prices surge past $3 a litre, they cannot simply absorb that cost. They pass it on to the farmer, who passes it on to the supermarket, who passes it on to you. Industry experts are warning that the cost of moving perishable goods could drive the price of fresh fruit and vegetables up by 40 to 50%. What to do? You must radically alter your weekly shopping habits. Stop buying highly perishable imported fruits that have traveled thousands of kilometers to reach your plate. Shift your diet toward locally grown, hardy vegetables that do not require expensive refrigerated transport. Buy whole pumpkins, potatoes, carrots, and onions. They last for weeks in a dark cupboard and cost a fraction of the price of out-of-season berries or imported greens. Start shopping at local farmers' markets where the food has only traveled a few kilometers, effectively cutting the major transport costs out of the equation. Number 5. Establish a local community network. The Liquid Fuel Emergency Act is designed to protect the state, not the individual. If rationing gets severe, government resources will be entirely focused on maintaining critical infrastructure, hospitals, military and major freight routes. Your quiet suburban street will be left to fend for itself. What to do? You need to know your neighbors. If fuel is heavily restricted, you will need to carpool to get to work or the supermarket. If the power grid goes down, you might need to share resources. Someone has a gas BBQ, someone else has a deep freezer full of meat that needs to be cooked before it spoils. Someone else has a large first aid kit. In a prolonged crisis, isolation is your biggest enemy. The people who survive systemic shocks are the ones who trade skills, share resources, and communicate locally. Do not rely on the government to deliver a ration pack to your door. Rely on the person living next to you. Escalation and pattern reveal. Do you see the pattern hiding behind the political press conferences? The government is publicly stating that rationing is not a conversation we need to have. But privately, they are tapping into emergency domestic reserves, begging fuel companies to divert diesel to regional areas. and wargaming their powers under the Liquid Fuel Emergency Act, 1984. We have built a society that is 100% reliant on a fuel source we do not control. When the global shipping lanes choke, the illusion of infinite abundance shatters. The law is already written. The trigger is sitting right there. The only question is whether you will be prepared when they finally pull it. Final message and call to action. Australian food culture and our way of life have drifted dangerously far into a false sense of security. We believed that because we are an island nation that grows its own food, we were immune to global chaos. But this fuel crisis proves that a tomato on a regional farm is completely useless if there is not a drop of diesel to drive it to the city. You do not have to be a victim of government rationing or supermarket panic. You can take control today, build your pantry buffer, secure your medications, keep your tank half full, and start talking to your neighbors. If this video opened your eyes to the sweeping powers the government holds over your fuel and food, tap the like button so more Australians can wake up and prepare. If you want to stay one step ahead of the supply chain collapse and protect your family's freedom, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because the mainstream news will not tell you the truth until the pumps are already turned off. Now, I want to hear from you in the comments. Have you noticed the fuel shortages hitting your local area yet? And what is the first prep you are going to complete after watching this video? Let me know below.